When you think of yourself as a director, you think of yourself as a theater director?
Not anymore, actually.
Not anymore.
I think I did for a while when I was making films. But I think doing the Bond movies and working on that kind of scale put paid to that. I mean, I do feel comfortable on a movie set now. I do feel like, you know, I know what I'm doing. And there was also...
And it is as satisfying for you.
Yes, but a different part of the process. I mean, for me, rehearsals are everything. In the theatre. That's where the real creation takes place, and that's the most exciting time. And film, it's the other end of the process. It's when you're in the editing room and you feel, you know, much more in control. And it's that's very creative.
When you're in the editing room, do you find yourself saying, "Oh my God, we did not get what I needed or wanted"?
All the time.
All the time.
Yes, all the time. I mean, you know, you're constantly dancing around what you've missed. I mean, hopefully you've got enough that you actually, you know, did get. But, you know, I don't think many directors can bear to watch their own movies shortly after they finish them, because I think all you see is flaws and narrative holes and
so
smoke
you don't
and
watch
mirrors.
it more than once or twice?
When it's finished, I often, I mean, there are some movies from the day I finished them I've never seen again. I mean, I might have bumped into them on cable for 10 minutes, but, you know, then there are some that you know, you go back and revisit because you're interested.
But is it primarily because you see things that you wish you had done, or simply that you have done it?
It's difficult to explain. You feel kind of almost resentful of them in a way. They dominate your life for so long, and you're so much a part of them, and then you have to leave them behind. But you can't see them with any clarity for a couple of years. I mean, sometimes you have a nice experience when you watch a movie and you think, wow, that's better than I remember it. I'm actually proud of that film. And at the time I was confused and conflicted about it and remember it badly. But actually now, you know, and then sometimes it's the other way around. You know, you can't wait to see, well, I haven't seen it for years, and then it's really disappointing. You know, sometimes that works.
I think you did this at BAFTA, and you listed 10 pieces of advice for aspiring directors.
This is for young directors thinking of directing a big action movie, it was tongue-in-cheek.
Oh, okay. So it's tongue-in-cheek. Get in touch with your inner 12-year-old. He or she was such an interesting kid. That's tongue-in-cheek, but is there something to that?
Oh yes, I mean that I think if you're going to, well, for me, doing Bond was in part going back to myself, as you have to find the kid that was taken by that world, that sort of you know, forbidden world of adults and danger and sexuality and weirdness. That when I was 12, I went to see Live and Let Die. And you know, it was a thrilling moment. I remember it really vividly, and to try and sort of take away your ingrained snobbery to do with, you know, which I think is there to some degree and has been there with Bond over the years, because, you know, it's considered, you know, a B movie or a pot boiler or whatever in certain literary circles. So there's all that, and trying to find a way to view it with innocence.
You also said you can only ever point the camera at one thing at a time.
Yeah, I think there's a tendency
to try to do too much. Well,
exactly, to try and do too much at the same time. And, you know, look, this is a personal thing. I mean, I know that there are great filmmakers, Paul Greengrass, for example, who makes the Bourne movies, who creates a kind of whirlwind of energy, which is to do with having multiple cameras. But I can only concentrate on one thing at a time. I think it's really what I'm saying. And if you don't, you're going to work faster often if you concentrate on one thing at a time and do 2 takes than if you do 17 takes on 8 cameras, and you're not really sure what you're looking at.
You say you're playing roulette with someone else's money. If you're going to bet it all on black, you need to be able to explain why.
Yes, well, the important thing about that is you need to be able to explain, not you need to explain.
Yes. But
you need to have the articulacy to explain why what you're doing is important, how it fits into the story, why it is that you need, you know, 8,000 costumed extras in Mexico City and 3 helicopters, and why 2,000 wouldn't be okay and 2 helicopters. You know,
I think this is a huge point in life too. I mean, it is. If you can't, if you don't know it well enough to explain it, then you don't know it well enough. Whatever you want to do.
I think that's true of in many walks. I mean, I think that the other thing is that you have to, you know.
I mean, I realize some things are not explainable
But it's a gift. I mean, you're being gifted. It's a total privilege to make a film. You're using ultimately it's someone else's money. I mean, you want a novel, you just sit down at the typewriter. You don't have to. You're not costing anything anyone. Right. I mean, someone may pay you in advance if you're a good novelist, but basically, you're in isolation and you have the freedom. But you cannot work as a director unless someone pays you enormous amount of money to make the film you want to make, and that is part of the process.
Making an action sequence is only interesting when you're in the cutting room. Up until then, I mentioned this earlier in a conversation about Spectre, up until then, it is literally the most tedious thing you will ever do. You mean that?
Yes. Yeah. Action is really, because you have to be so meticulous, you have to be safe, it's very dangerous. You're doing action for real, which you do in a Bond movie. It's a tradition in a way, and but I don't think it's a crusade so much as the fact that I feel like audiences are more engaged with action when they feel it's really happening. And there's a very delicate balance now. You're trying to strike between CGI and real special effects. And it's tricky when you're in a Bond world, which is half in and half out of fantasy. So, but yeah, it's very, very slow and very tedious, and you have to sort of disconnect your impatience. I mean, I was very frustrated when I first started doing it on Skyfall, because my rhythm is a theatre rhythm. You know, I like to be able to get it up on its feet and see it, and then shape it. But you can't do that with action. It's very, very slow. And once you do it and you begin to realise how to put it together in a cut room, of course you need a brilliant editor, it then starts to become interesting.
On the day, be prepared, but also be prepared to make stuff up.
Yes, that's true. That's what we're saying with Daniel, really, which is that you have to, however much you plan and however vast the structure is that's supporting you, and there are thousands of people, you have to remain free in front of camera, because it doesn't matter how much money you're spending, how much action there is. If what's happening in front of camera is not interesting and not alive, it's all meaningless. It's completely pointless. And so you do have to maintain an improvisatory element, even as everything else is incredibly well planned.
Do you find the best actors you've worked with are like Daniel? They want to do it over and over? You know, that there is no.
Every actor's different.
And not that he said that either.
Daniel is, you know, Bond is a very difficult part to play, because you know you 1 inch to the left, 1 inch to the right emotionally, and it's too real, too truthful, too emotional. The other is too casual, too suave, too devil may care, too camp. You know, you're always walking a knife edge, and you know that suit that he wears most of the time is a kind of straitjacket. You know, you have to hold yourself. There's a bearing. You have to look good. You have to look cool. You're a style icon. You know, these are complicated things. And then also to give an emotional reality to the character, you know, that's tricky. And everyone has an opinion. Every single person out there, you know, Bond needs to be this, Bond needs to be that. Well, Bond should be this way, Sean Bond should be that way. And, you know, he was terrified when he did Casino Royale. I remember seeing him at the time. You know, but I think that, and, you know, I remember as a director, you have the same thing. I went to Turkey on the last movie, and I got out of the car, and someone said very nicely, "We're thrilled to have you here in Turkey. You know, very excited the Bond movie. They're so much better now. They're not trying to be funny, right?" And I said, "Oh, I agree. I like them a bit more serious." And then I went in 10 steps, and the woman behind the counter said, "You're going to put some jokes in this one." And that's Bond, right? I mean, because everyone has a different version, and they want to see it. You know.
You say you need to, when you're choosing collaborators, do not listen to the people who tell you, "Yes, but I've never done a big movie." If they're any good, they will learn, just like I did.
It's more about the fact that there's a definite suspicion of bringing people, encouraging them to migrate from television or small independent film, or theatre for that matter, into large-scale movie making. And I think that sometimes the studio or people will say, "Yeah, but you know, they've never done a big movie. They've done a great score here or a great bit of cinematography." And it seems crazy now, because they did Skyfall and were very lauded for it, but there was suspicion of, for example, bringing Roger Deakins in to shoot Skyfall. Well, but he's a great cinematographer, of course, but isn't he a bit arty? Isn't he a bit, you know? And the same with Thomas Newman, who did the score. You know, and that's how it works sometimes, is that you get a very, you know, you're very odd, that feeling that there are people who do big and people who do small. And I don't believe that at all.
You need to learn to tune out the white noise. You cannot please everyone.
Well, that's what we were just saying, really. And there's a lot of white noise. I mean, you have to embrace the dialogue with the audience, which is a little bit like tuning into the white noise, because, you know, if you make a normal movie, you basically, you know, you make the film, you finish it, then you make a trailer, and then you release the trailer, and it just begins a little, you know, knowledge, a little awareness of the film, and then the movie comes out. Bond, there's a press conference. They review the press conference, the choice of cast, the song, the singer of the song, the poster, the trailer, the second trailer, the teaser, the casting of Bond, the choice of director. Everything is a dialogue, and you have to embrace that, because that's part of the process. And that's the way I think that a movie like Spectre can compete with something magnificent like Game of Thrones or Mad Men, which has a weekly dialogue with its audience. So you have to, in a way, go for that and just let it happen. But at the same time, don't read the reviews.
Would you be prepared to do something like Game of Thrones?
Oh, God, yes, absolutely.
In a second. Because you have airtime? Because it's
story. I mean, that's what we do. We tell stories, and it's a 10-hour, 20-hour, 40-hour story. I mean, what could be better, you know? That's what gives you a kick. I mean, I get a kick out of story, and so, yeah, of course, many of the best filmed art, whatever you want to call it, of the last 20 years now has been, I mean, I challenge anyone to find anything better than The Wire or The Sopranos on film. I mean, I'm not saying it's better or worse than, it's just an unbelievable piece of work on any level, or Breaking Bad. I mean, you know, and this is not news to anyone, me saying this, but I think it's absolutely, I mean, it is to the detriment of movies to a degree, because the middle ground of movies has migrated onto television. You know, the movies that I made when I started out, American Beauty, Road to Perdition, Jarhead, Revolutionary Road, I couldn't make any of those movies at a major studio now for the money that I spent on them, even then, because, you know, they're either very small or they're very big. There's nothing in the middle. And that's because of television really being so strong. And so you see, you know,
television is a home for things in the middle.
Well, for ambitious, you know, there's a kind of fearlessness about television now, which is amazing, and audiences embracing it. But that's not, you know, Hollywood backing off serious movies. It's audiences not going to serious movies. You know, they fulfill a demand, and if the demand's not there, and they go instead to television, and that's what they're going to make.
Tarantino's, this is easy. Spielberg, Nolan, Scorsese, Greengrass, J.J., and Paul Thomas Anderson all still shoot on film. There is a reason.
Yeah, it is easy, and that's you know, it's not about film is better or worse. I've shot movies on digital, like I said before. I shot Skyfall on digital. It's simply that there should be a choice. The choice has to be preserved. I mean, I think almost the biggest loss has already happened, which is the film projection is now dead, and that is you know, something that should be mourned. I mean, it's the end of an era, but you know, it's amazing to work on film.
You're trying to surf the big wave, so be prepared to be wiped out. But when you catch it, it feels like nothing else. True.
Yeah.
How many times have you caught it?
You know, half a dozen times in each movie, when you feel like, wow, this really is, there's nothing better. Yeah. I mean, we did a sequence in Mexico City. The movie starts with a 4-minute shot. And in order to achieve that shot, it's thousands of people have to be working together in absolute unison and synchronicity all at the same time. And when it's done, the cheer that goes up, the excitement from people who've worked on a cruise for 40 years, say, I've never seen anything like this. That was an absolute thrill. And I was aware as I was doing it, I'd probably never do that again. And that was, you know, and it is a very particular, different emotional buzz than you get from a two-handed scene that's been absolutely beautifully rendered by two great actors, you know, and the camera's captured the magic, but it is equally valid.
When you get excited, don't be afraid to leap out of your chair and sing the Bond theme.
Well, we've all done it.
Yes. And with respect to you, the same thing I talked to Daniel about. You've enjoyed this experience. You've learned for things. Mm-hmm. Do you learn anything that affects what you do on stage?
Not really.
It's such a different animal.
It's totally different. However, what I do on stage did affect this movie. I did a production of King Lear with Simon Russell Beale just before we made this film. And I look at it now and I can see it's in all sorts of little areas. I mean, the obsession with the eyes and blinding. I'd just been doing the greatest blinding scene in the history of literature. So those things do feed in, you know, but it doesn't always work the other way. I think what I love the theatre for is the opposite of what I just described. You know, it's calm and privacy and focus, and you know, the purity of it. You know, the story, the distance between the idea and the story is so short, whereas in movies it's so long.
Do you have any obsession, any dream, any sense that before I die, this I have to do?
It's all sport related, Charlie. I mean, you know, it's all like, you know, I'm.
You swim the English Channel?
No, I can't do sport. I'm talking about, you know, the things that fascinate me and still make me. I mean, look, I love what I do, so I'm still made excited by that. But you know, I'm still a fan. I'm a fan of great managers. I'm a fan of great players. I'm a fan of great musicians, you know, and all of those things. I feel like, you know, everything gets pushed away when you make these films. There, your life stops, and I'd love to have an opportunity to follow some of those people, to tell stories for real. I mean, I'd like to make a couple of documentaries and to do things that perhaps are closer to reality. I just think
you do things about people that have achieved a certain level of greatness.
Yes, that I admire.
That you admire.
Yeah, I mean, I think
capture what it is, to capture their being, to capture their process, to capture their mindset, to capture their preparation, to capture their all that.
But you know, well, it's interesting because I mean, of course, it's what you do. Right. You're trying to get to the center of somebody and work out what makes them tick, and you have to choose carefully because, and also to remind people that there is still wonder in the world. Oh, yeah. I know that sounds corny on some level, but that that we live with remarkable people, and that there are remarkable people out there. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's something that film can do very, very well.
Yeah. Somebody once said to me, you know, there are only two kinds of profiles. One is the tragedy of it all, or the wonder of it all.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Yeah. Thank you. It's great to see you.
It's a great pleasure.
Very, very good. Thank you.
As always.
Sam Mendes, director of Spectre. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.